Okay, today we are going to be talking about Shimei and what he teaches us in his life. And it's an interesting story because it gets bad and then it gets better and it gets bad. So it's one of those things that it doesn't kind of follow along that continuity line. It has its ups and downs. And just as background, we're going to be in 2 Samuel 15, 13 through 18 to begin. 2 Samuel 15, 13 through 18 to begin. David is fleeing, and he is fleeing his son Absalom. And Absalom is trying to kill David. Absalom has installed himself as the king, as David's successor, and kind of got to get your successor out of the way before that can take effect. And we all know that was not God's will that Absalom be the king. And as we go through this, we see that during this rebellion, David is fleeing from Jerusalem. He's fleeing with his family and servants, some loyal foreign warriors and his mighty men. But we will see his reaction to leaving Jerusalem. Now, that being said, we are going to go back a little farther, okay? I always like to have the stage set before we go into the lesson. And the reason that David is fleeing, the reason that this is happening, if we turn over to, get the right place here. Let's go to 2 Samuel 15, or 2 Samuel 12, I'm sorry. 12, 9 through 14. 2 Samuel 12, 9 through 14. Sets the stage here. We'll have to set the stage for that. Because before that happened, what had David done? He had Uriah killed so he could marry Bathsheba, and Bathsheba was pregnant with David's child. And what happened immediately after birth of the child? He died. That was the punishment, but nobody knew about it. Nobody. There were people who knew about it, but it was not common knowledge. And then God comes to Nathan and tells Nathan to tell David the story about the guy who kills the little sheep and all of that. And David is just getting outraged. How could a man do that? And David says, "You're the man." And it's not like, "Hey, you're a man." It's, "You are the man." And David then repents, but there are consequences. And as we read here in 2 Samuel 12, 9 through 14, this takes place after all of this. Nathan then says, why? And this is what the Lord is asking. The Lord says through Nathan, ask David this. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with a sword and took his wife to be your own. Now it goes on to say, you killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. It was not, he did not go out and do it. And then in a way, that's even worse when you think about it. He can't do it himself, so he's going to have somebody else do it. And that is, in my judgment, worse than just doing it directly. Neither one is a good thing, but he took the let somebody else get the blood on his hands rather than me. Now, therefore, the sword will never depart from your house, because you despised me, and this is God speaking, and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own. Now, that is a horrible indictment for a man after God's own heart. It's not like we're talking about somebody who has been anti-God or whatever. He's a man after God's own heart, but he did this horrible thing. Is he forgiven when he says, let's come to that in a second. This is what the Lord says. Nathan continues there at 11. Out of your household, I'm going to bring calamity on you. He doesn't name him, but his name is Absalom. Okay? Before your very eyes, I will take your wives and give them to one who is close to you, and he will sleep with your wives, in broad daylight. And we don't need to go much farther on that. We know what that was about. You, David, did it in secret, but I will do this thing in broad daylight before all Israel. So he's going to be humiliated in addition. Then David said to Nathan, this is the important part for David, I have sinned against the Lord. He didn't say, well, you don't really understand how all of this happened. He just went straight up. David repents, and Nathan says, the Lord has taken away your sins. You sinned, you are not going to die. But because by doing this, you have shown utter contempt for the Lord, the son born to you will die. So, but that's not the end of it, is it? Because we also know that what is happening with David and Absalom is an outgrowth of this. This is where the sword is going to be in your house, in your household. So now we've got the stage set. So now we can proceed. Now, what happens is David flees, and we're going to start at 2 Samuel 15, 13 through 18. 2 Samuel 15, 13 through 18. A messenger came and told David, the hearts of the people of Israel are with Absalom. That's not a good thing. I guess those were the early polling data showing that Absalom had won the election, so now it's not going to be. But anyway, then David said to all his officials who were with him, he's in Jerusalem still, come, we must move quickly to overtake us, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin on us and put the city to the sword, the he being Absalom. The officials, the king's officials answered him, your servants are ready to do whatever our Lord the king chooses. Well, they believe that David is still the king, and he is. The king set out, as this goes on, the king set out with his entire household following him. Now this is kind of interesting, but left 10 concubines to take care of the palace. Okay, I guess he was concerned about the palace, so he left 10 concubines. That must have really hurt, but he left 10 concubines behind to take care of the palace. Verse 17, so the king set out with all of his people following him, and they halted at the edge of the city. Now realize, this is the king leaving Jerusalem. And all his men marched past him, along with all of the Kerethites and the Pelethites, and all the 600 Gittitites, who had accompanied him from Gath, marched before the king. Now this is an honor to the king at this point. This is like, for those of you in the military, remember pass and review. That's what this is like. And then we drop down to 15, verse 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 23 now. The whole countryside wept aloud as all the people passed by. The king crossed the Kidron Valley, and all the people moved toward the wilderness. He is now, if you will, on the run from Absalom. Zadok was there too, and all the Levites who were with him were carrying the Ark of the Covenant of God. They set down the Ark of God, and Abiathar offered sacrifices until all the people had finished leaving the city. Now, why did he take the Ark of the Covenant with him?
I'm sure he thought that Absalom would in some way desecrated.
I think that's as good as anything, because Absalom does not have any morals or any scruples or any, he's got a lot of hair, but he doesn't have any morals or scruples, and he doesn't know any boundaries. His boundaries, well, he knows his boundaries. His boundaries are whatever I want. It's like Dale said this morning in the sermon. There are a lot of people who go around, it's all about me. And if it's all about me, then there isn't much room for anything else, is there? All right. Then the king said to Zadok, take the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the Lord's eyes. Now he is, God is in control here. He will bring me back and let me see it and his dwelling place again. In other words, David is not saying this is going to work out real well. He is basically saying things are not going very well here. And we need to, we can take it back because it's going to be all right. So, but there at 26, he says, if he says, rather, David continues, but if he, God says, I am not pleased with you, then I am ready. Let him do to me whatever seems good to him. God is in control, is what he's saying. And that he had repented earlier, and now he is now in a situation where he recognizes that God is going to be, or God is in control. Then we drop down to verse 30 of chapter 15. But David continued up the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. He was in a very repentant state at that point. His head was covered. That's another indication of the mourning, if you will, that he is in. And he was barefoot. He is in a humble mourning mode, if you will. All the people with him covered their heads too, and were weeping as they went up. So David was very humble before God.
He understood why it was happening.
And accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. He knew why, and he said, I accept it. Some people, yeah, I know what I did was wrong, but I'm not accepting this. So, but he did, and that is a good point, very good point. He knew that it was wrong, and he accepted it. God started moving on. All right. Any comments so far? Have any of you taken classes at LCU? Because your response is exactly the same way. Anybody who's you want to quiet a class, ask them a question, and all of a sudden, and then they began praying too. Looking down. Anyway, but you guys don't look down. You just look at me like, what are we paying you for?
I already made my comment.
What's that?
I already made my comment.
Yeah. Hey, I'm allowed one comment per class. I made it early. Now leave me alone. All right. As we go. All right. Now where are we? Okay. Now. Let's get organized here, because as I said, we kind of go back and forth and back and forth. All right. Now, Mr. Shimei makes his appearance for the first time. We're going to 2 Samuel 16, 5 through 14. Realize that David is, if you want to call it that, on the run. And Shimei comes into the picture here. We will find, of course, as we read this, we will see that Shimei is a member of Saul's family. So he has aught against David over the killing of Saul and Jonathan, and we'll come to that in a moment. As King David approached, and realize the writer continues to refer to David as king. He doesn't say, when he refers to Absalom, he does not refer to him as King Absalom. The inspired writer refers to David as the king, because he is. As King David approached Bahurim, a man from the same clan as Saul's family came out there. His name was Shimei, son of Gera. And he cursed as he came out. So you see, he's in a bad mood. It's already bad. Let's make it worse. He pelted David and all the king's officials with stones, though all the troops and the special guard were on David's left and right. Shimei is really brash and open about his contempt for David. And in doing so, he commits an act that is worthy of death under the law, because David is still the king. Pelting the king does not is a crime. And then he's going to go on with this, and he's going to curse him. As he cursed there in verse 7, Shimei said, get out, you murderer, you scoundrel. Apparently he had a pretty strong opinion of David and expressed it, not in very, very clear, concise words. The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul. See, Shimei is not referring to what David did to Uriah. Shimei's got his own beef, if you will.
His political idea was different.
What's that?
His political idea was loyalty to Saul,
Yes,
even though David was appointed king.
yes, that's
He
exactly
didn't know the whole story.
right. And in whose place you have reigned. It's like,
He sees him as a usurper.
yes, it's you should not be there. The Lord has given the kingdom into the hands of your son Absalom. Not really a true statement in the sense that this was a deliberate act, but it was going to be part of what God said was going to happen. The sword will come from your household, and Absalom comes from your household, and he's out to get you. You have come to ruin because you are a murderer. Again, not referring to Attila, Uriah the Hittite, not Attila the Hittite.
Yeah, but he doesn't realize that David is a murderer in God's sight because of what he did.
Right, but he's got his own eye
Yeah.
with him. And we'll get to that in just a second. Then Abishai, son of Zur, we always have to, who is the son of? We don't care. No, we do. Because it's hard to pronounce. Zeruiah said to the king, why should this dead dog? And what's a dog in the Jewish world? It is, most people, dog is man's best friend, but in the Jewish world this time, you call somebody a dog, that's about as low as we can get. Why should this dead dog, already identifying him as dead, curse my lord the king? Let me go over and cut his head off. All right, let's back up. We'll go back to the very first one. What about Nabal? Nabal makes all of these nasty comments out of David's presence about him, returns to the men David's men, remember, who heard Nabal go into his tirade about who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? Why should I give up all my stuff for you guys? And when he goes back to David, what's David's reaction? Let's go, get that sword. Let's go, put on your swords, and he put on his sword. We're going after Nabal. Why? Because Nabal had insulted the king. All right? Well, what does David do this time? This is now with Shimei, excuse me. And David said, but the king said, what does this have to do with you, sons of Zeruiah? If he is cursing because the Lord said to him, curse David, who can ask, why do you do this? A different reality, a different reaction, totally different. Of course, I know he's barefoot, so he may not be in the best fighting mode, but still, the reaction is, no, it's not. Then David said to Abishai and all his officials, my son, my own flesh and blood, referring to, is trying to kill me, referring to Absalom there, is trying to kill me. How much more then? This Benjamin, leave him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look upon my misery and restore to me his covenant blessing instead of his curse today. In other words, don't kill him. Totally different reaction. And as we recall, also Abigail kept, in the first story with Nabal, Abigail kept David from killing all these men. And that was a good thing. He'd already killed Uriah. Let's not go off and do this. And of course, David and his men continued along the road, and Shimei doesn't give up easily. Shimei is what we might call, my grandmother had the term stubborn head. I don't know if she was Scots. I don't know. That's a Scottish term, but she would say he is a stubborn head. What that means is he's not, give it up, but no. So we see from Shimei, and he's the one we're learning the lesson from. He's intense here. So David, while Shimei was going along the hill opposite him, cursing as he went, throwing stones at him, and then he introduces showering him with dirt. So if he could do anything else, he would have probably done it, because these are all acts of humiliating the king, just total disrespect to the king.
But David's accepting the punishment.
He is. And notice, to Shimei's, David has a little experience with killing somebody with a rock, but Shimei is not doing that, but he's still, it's purely the humiliation, and David takes it. And I think he's a better man for doing it. And Shimei becomes worse for what he can, and it frustrates him. I'm sure you've all been, starting as kids and growing up, dealing with people who, when you calmly respond to them, it makes them angrier sometimes. I had a situation where a guy was yelling right in my face, and he was jumping up and down. He was getting, red and all of this, and he was jumping up and down, and I just stood there, arms folded, which is what, I'm not receiving your message, but go ahead. And the more I did that, the more he jumped up and down, the worse it got. I didn't say a word to him.
Well, they end up making more fools themselves than they do anything else.
Yes, and the nice thing about it, the university policeman behind him arrested him. That was the real nice part. I went, no, I didn't do anything. This was kind of a heated moment that we didn't need to Shimei it.
He said, David said that the Lord had told him to do it.
Yeah.
That was kind of odd, I thought.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Shimei knew, the Lord actually told him to do it. I think what it was the Lord allowed him to do it, knowing that this is part, and David recognizes this was part of the punishment that God was meting out.
And the Lord let him do it, knowing that Shimei would.
Yeah.
It wasn't a matter. It wasn't a matter. Come on, Shimei. Do your best. It was a matter of.
Yep.
And he did it, and he did it with a great deal of drama. Now, there are a couple of things I don't like to cover very fast. One of the problems that Shimei had is, as a member of the family, as a member of Saul's family, he was upset with what he perceived David had done to Saul and to Jonathan. That was the first mistake. When he's talking about the blood, according to our author here, it's probably the blood of Saul and the blood of Jonathan. Well, what is wrong with that?
Well, he didn't actually take them down. They were killed on the battlefield.
And secondly, David had, how many times did he have an opportunity to kill Saul? And he did not. And what was his relationship with Jonathan?
He loved Jonathan.
He loved Jonathan. They were like brothers.
Yeah.
And what the lesson we take away from this is sometimes misperceptions and misunderstanding, and dare we say misinformation, whether it's provided by the Russians or somebody else, can be a catalyst to doing things that we later regret, because he does later regret it, and we'll get there today, believe me. If we have to stay till noon. But the point of it is, Shimei was operating under a misconception. And then the author goes on to say the second thing that maybe is flawed is his flawed belief may have ruled the day by concerning the deaths of Ishbosheth, Saul's only surviving son, and Abner, Saul's general and cousin. As a successor to Saul, Abner had Ishbosheth crowned as king over Israel. Now, again, we know that Joab killed Abner, and we also know that Saul's household may have believed that David was behind this, but he really was not. Joab, as we know from our study of the story, when we did the full Bible in 4 quarters a year, we learned that Joab was not a good guy. He was not operating on behalf of the good people. And then the third thing was David in his as king at one point. David prayed for an end to a 3-year drought. What's funny about it? Drought. The 3-year drought. And why is this happening? And God tells David that one of the reasons that this drought is continuing is it is for Saul and his bloody house, because he put the Gibeonites to death, and that is in Joshua 9, verse 1 thereabouts. But or maybe it's in 2 Samuel. But anyway, the point of it is this may have been a misconception, because David then ordered the hanging of the individuals the 7 sons or 7 men from Saul, 7 sons of Saul, had them hanged as a result directed by God, because the agreement had been with Joshua that the Gibeonites would be able to stay. And what had happened was Saul decided not to have it happen, so the punishment is visited on his family. But the problem is Shimei totally misunderstood all of this, blamed David for everything. He was to blame for the death of Saul and Jonathan. He was to blame for the death of the 7 sons. He was to be blamed for whoever, whatever happened. All right, now we'll take a little time out here and look at Absalom for just a couple of minutes. And it's what we'll do is I'll just summarize this, because we've got a little bit more to go yet, and we're running out of time. But and I won't keep you till noon. We should be done by 11. So, but anyway, Joab also killed Absalom, and in a most interesting way. Absalom is riding a donkey, and I guess that's kind of interesting for a lot of Westerners. Riding a donkey is silly. You ride a horse, but not a donkey. And I'm sure it's here in West Texas saying, what, donkey? You're riding a donkey. That just doesn't fit. You know, the donkey trail behind, pulling behind you, and he's got all the gear on. So anyway, in 2 Samuel 18, Absalom is riding a donkey, and he rides along, and what happens? His hair gets entangled in a tree, and the donkey, being the loyal donkey he is, just keeps on going. And Absalom is left hanging in the tree. Now, I mean, that is comical in a way. And then what happens is we have Joab sees him as a perfect target. He goes and gets 3 javelins just to make sure. He then stabs him, plunges 3 javelins in his heart, and then Absalom dies. Now, what is David's reaction to hearing about Absalom's death? He weeps, he mourns his son Absalom. Now, we can understand that, but Absalom wanted to kill his dad. And the second thing that David talked about was, I told him to get a haircut. Okay? He didn't do it. But the point of it is, David mourned Absalom's death. But God had no intention at all of letting Absalom rule, because he was not the king. He was not the anointed king. And the other thing to look at with that is, did God necessarily say, hey, Joab, go kill him? But God knew what Joab would do when presented with an opportunity. He was going to exploit. All right. Now, we go to 2 Samuel 19, starting in verse 15. Then the king, and this is David, returned and went as far as the Jordan. Now the men of Judah had come to Gilgal to go out and meet the king and bring him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Bahurim, hurried down with the men of Jordan to meet the king. Now, is this to repeat what he did before? No. With him were 1,000 Benjaminites, along with Ziba, the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. Excuse me. They rushed to the Jordan where the king was. They crossed at the ford, take the king's household over and do whatever he wished. So they're trying to be helpful. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell prostrate before, before the king, and said to him, "May my Lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my Lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king put this out of his mind. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned, but today I come here as the first from the tribes of Joseph to come and to meet my Lord the king." He has really repented of it, hasn't he? And then Ashbei, son of Zerahu, said, "Shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this? He cursed the Lord's anointed." Well, he's correct on that. It is a death penalty. It is a death penalty case. David replied, asked the same question again. "What does this have to do with you, you sons of Zerai, whoever you are? What right do you have to interfere? Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? I don't know that. I know that today I am king over Israel." So the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king promised him on oath. So David reacted consistently, and Shimei did the right thing. But Yogi Berra would say, it ain't over till it's over. Shimei comes up one more time, and we will go to that in 1 Kings. I knew you were tired of being 2 Samuel, so let's go somewhere else. Let's not go back to 2 Samuel again. All right, 1 Kings 2, 1 through 12. Starting at verse 1, we know that David is what we would say on his deathbed. When the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon, his son. And he starts there at verse 2 with how Solomon should act. "I am about to go the way of all the earth," David said, "so be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires." What does the Lord God require? Walk in obedience to him and keep his decrees and commands, his laws and regulations as written in the law of Moses. Do this so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. And the Lord said to David, it's quoted there, "If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel." Now we know from studying the kings of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, there were times when it was getting close. But that lineage from David to Jesus had to be maintained. And it was. And it wasn't because so many worked so hard to keep it that way. It was because God did that. Now, David continues. Now at verse 5, and then David has a couple of final things he's going to do here. Now you yourself know that Joab, here we go again, son of Zeruiah, you know what he did to me. What he did to the two commanders of Israel's army, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He killed them, shedding their blood in peacetime, as if in battle. And with that blood, he stained his belt around his waist and the sandals on his feet. Now that's figuratively for blood is not, we would say blood is on his hands, but this is blood is on him. And that's not a good thing. Deal with him according to your wisdom, but do not, now I'm going to deal with him according to your wisdom, but do not let his gray head, I hate it when they do that. What are they against that? His gray head go down to his grave in peace. And that's code for executing. Okay? But show kindness now to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead, and let them be among those who eat at your table. They stood by me when I fled from your brother Absalom. Now we get to Shimei, still on David's mind. And remember, you have with you Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Abraham, who called down bitter curses on me the day I went to Mahanaim, or when he left Jerusalem. When he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death by the sword. But now, do not consider him innocent. And we've got to understand that. You are a man of wisdom. You will know what to do to him. Bring his gray head down to the grave in blood. Then David rested or died with his ancestors and was buried appropriately in the city of David. He had reigned for 40 years. And we know that, again, from our study of the studies of the kings, 40 years was a long reign. Interestingly enough, Saul had a 40-year reign. David and Solomon did, but after that, it went downhill. There were a lot, some of them didn't last a year.
Some of them didn't last a month.
Yeah. And what's that?
One lasted 7 days.
Yeah,
One of
yeah, before he got killed. I mean, it was a shootout, to be sure. Now, he continues, or he doesn't continue, but 7 years in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his rule was firmly established. It's not over yet. Then, we go to verse 36 of 1 Kings 2, 36 through 46. Then the king, this will be Solomon, sent for Shimei and said to him, build yourself a house in Jerusalem and live there, but do not go anywhere else. The day you leave and cross the Kidron Valley, you can be sure you will die. Your blood will be on your own head. How much clearer did he make that condition? Couldn't have made it any clearer, could he? He's basically saying, you can build yourself a house in Jerusalem, you can live there, but do not go outside of Jerusalem, basically. Do not cross the Kidron Valley. Do not go outside of Jerusalem. Because if you do, what's going to happen? You're going to be put to death. You're going to be executed. Shimei answered the king, what you say is good. Your servant will do as my lord the king has said. And Shimei stayed in Jerusalem for a long time. And then we get to verse 39, but 3 years later. 3 years is a long time, I guess, but 3 years later, two of Shimei's slaves ran off to Oshish, son of Maacah, the king of Goth, and Shimei was told, your slaves are in Goth or Gath. At this, he saddled his donkey. Stay away from those stupid donkeys. Things happen bad when you start riding a donkey. Carry all of the gear, but all right, never mind. He saddled his donkey and went to Gath in search of his slaves. So Shimei went away and brought the slaves back from Gath. Well, apparently he forgot about don't leave Jerusalem. Don't cross the Kidron Valley. When Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and had returned, the king summoned him and said to him, did I not make you swear by the Lord and warn you on the day you leave to go anywhere else, you can be sure you will die. At that time you said to me, what you say is good, I will obey. Why then did you not keep your oath to the Lord? Not to Solomon, to the Lord, and obey the command I gave you. How many of you as parents had occasion to talk to your children? Not quite like they're going to die as a result, but the point is, didn't I tell you not to do that? And didn't you tell me I'm not going to, Daddy or Mom? And why then did you do it? And then what's the answer?
I forgot.
I didn't do it.
Oh, I didn't do it, or I forgot, or just like that. All right. The king also said to Shimei, you know in your heart all the wrong you did to my father David. Now the Lord will repay you for your wrongdoing. But King Solomon will be blessed, and David's throne will remain secure before the Lord forever. And then the king gave the order. The poor guy who wanted to cut the guy's head off is not given the order. It's given to Benaiah, the son of Jodiah, and all that. And he went out and struck Shimei down, and he died. And the last thing here, the kingdom was now established in Solomon's hands. So all of this with Absalom, all of this with Shimei, all of this with why ever Shimei did what he did, was no longer. Solomon, who then rules for 40 years, is firmly established.
Well, here's a big lesson for that too. Even though, you may be forgiven, you still have to accept the consequences of that. David had to, Shimei had to. I mean, they all had to accept the consequences, and it catches up with them.
We've talked about that, and we'll talk about it more. That is fundamentally part of what we're dealing with here. Some of the lessons we can learn from bad people, don't do what they do. But another lesson is if we do what they do, and we repent like they did, there's still going to be consequences. It's not like, does it mean eternal consequences? No. But what it does mean is, some people have done things that put them at health risk, and they've stopped doing it, and they have repented of their bad behavior, but still there are consequences. Any other comments? See, I didn't keep you till 11. Unless you want to, we can stay. No. Any other comments? I appreciate it very much. Oh, and next week we get to see, who do we get to see? Tune in next week. I always have this in the wrong place. Oh, but I do have it. Next week, it's Ophni and Phineas. Sounds like something out of a Wizard of Oz movie, but it's Ophni and Phineas, the lawless leaders. It's 1 Samuel 2:12 through 36 is our basic. What we will do basically, it's entitled Eli's Wicked Sons. Eli's sons were wicked men, had no regard for the Lord. So we know that's not a very good start for where they're headed, because they're probably already there with what they've done. Any other comments or questions? Have a blessed week and a great Christmas and whatever.